G'day and welcome to the Grow a Small Business Podcast. I'm your host, Troy Truen. Each week, we speak with an owner who has grown a business with 5 to 30 team members to something bigger. Diving into their numbers and unearthing the pain they've experienced, we explore what they did to overcome each barrier and what they would do differently from day one. Let's get into it. We'll have all the show notes and any resources mentioned in the cast on our website. In 2014, with 14 participants, they started an online boot camp business offering content, weekly meetups, mentoring and project-based learning to entrepreneurial young professionals. The boot camp focuses on soft skills and mindsets, not education for any specific role or industry, and exposes them to most corners of a business so they can find, then hone their professional passion. At the end of the course, they are placed in fast-growing companies seeking talented young people with what they have coined as forward tilt, young professionals who want to add real value, have initiative and a sense of urgency. At age 24, Cameron helped found the business, growing from 4 FTE to 6 years later around 11. With $12,000 US for the 6-month course, first year revenue grew from $30,000 to now in 2020 around 1.5 million US or 2.3 million Australian dollars per annum. Since 2017, they'd had over 100 participants a year and maintain a 90% graduation rate. Their next stage of growth is ramping up the marketing while maintaining higher product quality and getting to the 500 people a year mark. Funding has been bootstrapping for the first year and a half, then took on $500,000 in investment in 2015. Cameron believes the hardest thing in growing a small business is persistence. The longer you go, the more likely you will survive and thrive. And advice he'd give himself on day one is practice patience. Welcome everyone. Today I'm interviewing Cameron Sorsby from Praxis. Thanks for your time today, Cameron.
Great to be here, Troy.
Let's start with how we know each other. One of your colleagues, Sydney, reached out to me a few weeks ago about having a chat, and so our audience can discover a little bit about the Praxis business and what it has to offer.
Yeah, sounds great.
And you're based in Denver, Colorado, USA?
Yep, based here in Denver. Myself and our COO, we're here in Denver, and then our team is based remotely across the US.
Yeah, right. Okay, great. Well, tell our audience a bit about the business, where it's located, what it does, how it makes money.
Sure. So Praxis, we are a startup career boot camp it's designed for entrepreneurial young people that don't know exactly what they want to do career-wise, like pretty much every young person, but are looking for something outside of the typical higher education college path. So our program, they go through a 6-month professional development boot camp, and then we place them with growing companies all across the country into entry-level non-tech roles.
Great. Yeah, I was going to ask that if it's a specific niche or industry or even role within a company that you're training up on, but it's broad skills to effectively be a kick-ass, professional or a ninja in a workplace. Is that right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think what's different about Praxis compared to there's more and more boot camps popping up today than ever, which is cool to see. But a lot of them are usually very role based, usually on the tech side, or there's sales boot camps out there. Our approach is more, all right, what do you need to get started? And there's certain great opportunities early in your career that can really accelerate that early growth. And then from there, we want to focus on all right, what are going to be the soft skills and mindsets and attitudes that you need to have long-term career success?
Yeah, I was going to ask that. Can you give some examples of those mindsets or skills that we're talking about here that your candidates find really valuable once they hit the ground and start working?
Yeah, so I think both because of who we look to accept into the program and who's attracted to doing something like Praxis, but also what we really emphasize during the boot camp, it's how to become an entrepreneurial employee. So I think, the typical setup is hey, I'm going to go get a job. I'm going to check in, check out 9 to 5, get my paycheck and, move on through my day essentially. And our participants, they develop a really strong mindset of, I am here to create value for this business.
Great.
And by creating value for this business, I'm going to get a lot of learning and experience for myself that now I can leverage to advance in my career in the directions I want to go into.
So I've got two questions on that. So the seed must already be there in the candidate to have that passion and I guess that vision and maturity to think that way. But obviously that's something that you further develop. So firstly, how do you go about finding the right candidate so you've got that better success rate? I see you've got a 90% graduation rate, which is fantastic. So how do you select those candidates to make sure those people have the right attitude?
Yeah, I think, we look for a number of things in our own application process. And we honestly don't pay attention to your academic track record at all. Like, we don't ask what your GPA is. We're going to ask you just like what your background is, and you might talk about that, but it's not something we're formally looking for. I think the key indicators of success are you self-directing your own education and kind of growth on your own in some way? So a lot of applicants that stand out, they might be starting their own like small business as a teen, like either online or something as simple as like, hey, I started a lawn care business and I got up to like, 20 clients in my neighborhood, which is really cool to see.
I did that as a 13 or 14-year-old. I had a lawn mowing business around my very small town. It was, yeah.
Yeah. And it's cool. It's really cool to see. We have a number of applicants that come and they're like, they have that type of story, and you can tell they take it very seriously. Like, they approach even something as small as that very professionally and with just a stronger sense of maturity, I think. And that always catches our eye. Young people that have more work experience for their life stage, always great to see. Being able, like, getting those early reps of just handling customers and being responsible for, a business is paying you to provide a service. And there's just so many valuable, I think, long-term skills that people learn at a young age that perform at a high level in those types of roles. And people that, again, like I said, like, are taking their education into their own hands. So people that are intellectually curious and they're reading on their own outside of the classroom, listening to podcasts, and things like that at an early age are all good indicators to us.
I was going to say that exactly. Yeah, they're strong indicators if someone is already investing in themselves, in their ongoing education. And just going back to that point of academia, not everyone is wired to excel at school, but they could be smart and really, succeed in a workplace. So it's good that you've kind of lowering that score, or, they have to be academically brilliant.
And it's interesting because we've seen successful participants, they come from, like, they were accepted into Ivy League schools or, Stanford, and they can be a great fit for the program. And someone that couldn't have cared less about, academics growing up and were just more interested in getting work experience or sports or something, they have the raw material and they can be a good fit. And so we've just found, like, that's just not a leading indicator if someone's going to be successful in a program like Praxis.
Yeah, absolutely. And the second part to my question there was the seeds there, you've got them through the door. Then how do you develop or embed even further that mindset? And I guess a lot of it, what you're doing, I'm guessing here, is helping them build not just or change mindsets, but also to build habits that are going to make them a much better professional over their career.
Yeah. So our curriculum focus, we make it as project-based as possible. And we're trying to replicate, like, what it's going to feel like, what are you going to be working on in these actual positions as much as possible. So everyone gets exposed to, like, sales, marketing, operations. And instead of just like, hey, here's a bunch of good content to consume, the primary focus of the bootcamp is you're constantly working on different projects that help you gain that knowledge and context, and, like, hey, what would it actually be like to be in marketing? And what are the valuable skills associated that you need and that hiring managers want to see in these, like, entry-level positions? And the more those projects can be like for actual businesses or something you're creating on your own with the intention of going out and selling it or marketing it, to provide, even something as simple as like a blog post, and your goal is to try to get, a decent audience and their eyeballs on that blog post. Like, just approaching everything. In some ways it's a subtle shift, but in many ways it's kind of radical from the typical classroom experience. You're focused on producing outcomes as opposed to, I'm trying to get grades.
Yes. It's an important distinction, I think. Absolutely. And doing real world work makes it hit home a lot more for the candidates, I think, as well. I would have loved something like this when I was the start of my career. I think I found that quite interesting and invaluable. I guess also because they get an entry into different aspects of smaller businesses, the varying corners of the business and roles, and that can start to pique their interest about, well, actually, I'm really, really enjoying this marketing stuff. I'm going to swat up more on that and maybe, shift my path towards down that way.
Yep. Yeah. And it's been really cool to see the evolution of our hiring partner network, because when we first launched, I think that felt more of a question mark on, hey, are there enough companies out there that are willing to take a chance on young talent that, they're unproven? And, how much is the the value of that credential ingrained in hiring and everything? And we pretty quickly figured out that companies and businesses, especially small businesses and, startups that are at that, 5 to 30 level employee, like, they're starving for talent that's going to come in, work hard, has that attitude of like, I'm here to prove myself and I want to learn.
Yep.
And they're not coming in with a more entitled mindset. That definitely has been an issue, especially, at least here in the States.
I think globally you're right that younger generation currently has that against them, that people have the opinion of them that they feel entitled. Yeah.
Yep.
That's great. And what about the structure of how the course is delivered? Is there like any group activities or kind of classroom meetups, things like that, or is it just purely content?
Yeah, so we have a curriculum portal online where all the actual content's hosted, and that's, as a participant, that's what you're going through on a day-to-day basis. And then we supplement that with a live presence throughout the bootcamp experience. So twice a week, they're meeting at night to go through live sessions on Zoom where, one of those sessions a week, it's focused on the specific curriculum module that you're currently in. And you're going through this with, a cohort of 10 to 15 participants and a module advisor that's leading that and guiding you through it. And then the other weekly live session is that we bring in entrepreneurs and other professionals to run more general, like, professional development workshops for both everybody that's in the program as well as alumni. So that's a nice touch. And then on top of that, that is supplemented by one-on-one advising sessions, and you're getting feedback on everything you're working on.
Great. Yeah. And is there any in-person physical meetups at all, or it's all purely online?
Not as part of the formal program, but for the community, like our alumni network and active participants, we try to do at least one big meetup a year.
Yep.
And the plan this year was going to be start to do more regional meetups, on a bi-monthly basis.
Yep.
Obviously that's on pause right now.
Yeah, COVID-19, that's right. And maybe talk to how you charge at the moment. We're April 2020, kind of what do the fees look like for a candidate?
Sure. So total tuition for the program is $12,000. And we have different payment plans that, you can pay up front or you can pay over, typically a 12-month period. And, that just makes the payments a little bit more accessible for people that want to do the program.
Yeah, great. Let's talk a bit about how you started out, because I always find it interesting that, where the kernel of the idea came from. So what year did you start, and kind of where did the idea come from?
So the company was formed in 2013 and we started classes in 2014. And the original idea was really from our our early teens experience. A lot of us came from an education background, so we were working with more ambitious, driven high school and college students already. And over time, we were seeing that they were becoming less and less satisfied with their college experience, not just from the increasing financial costs that's happening in the States here, but just for this is not really preparing me for my career itself. We would hear a lot like, I'm bored in my classes and I want to go out and get experience. So that was one side. And then on the other side, some of our team, before we launched this, we were working with successful business owners in different capacities. And this was kind of after the 2008 recession. And they're still telling us, like, I'm looking for talent all the time still. It's just really hard to find the type of person that I'm going to feel confident can come into my business, learn what it takes to add value. So we kind of saw the disconnect on both sides of that market.
Great. Yeah. As I've said in a couple of podcasts recently, when I'm looking at adding team members or even business partners, the two things I look for are attitude and aptitude. So they don't have to have a great experience or, like you said, in this context, an academic record. But if they've got the right attitude, business owners particularly, it is one of the biggest things we look for is whether someone's got a shit attitude. It's not just a cultural fit thing, but it is, are they there for the right reasons? They want to get on with the work. They enjoy doing whatever task they've allocated. That is a big difference to someone who's just watching the clock, as you said before, 9 to 5, punch in, punch out.
Yep. Yeah. We call it having forward tilt. Like, you have that, you want to take initiative. There's a sense of urgency, and you understand. I think you understand the dynamic between an employee and an employer. At the end of the day, they're paying you to add value and contribute to their company. And I think most people, if you just explain that to them, of course they get it. But there's a difference between understanding that on paper and living that out. And then I think what's really been a differentiator with the type of person who does Praxis is they understand how that benefits them personally.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. And I also think you're in a really good time at the moment. I think every year college and university is becoming less and less relevant. They've always had that reputation, in my opinion anyway, that they're disconnected from reality, from when people step out of there into the real world, particularly in the, around the business space. They're just not preparing candidates or students for the real workplace. So I think you guys are in a prime position to add a lot of value to businesses and your candidates or your customers.
Yeah, absolutely. We've definitely noticed over the past 6 years of building Praxis that it's trending in the right direction. Young people and their families, when we first started out, we would have people apply to the program, get accepted, be super excited. And, they're 17, 18. And then they turn around and be like, oh, now I need to talk to my family about this. and their parents have pretty much been planning their college education since they were born, if not beforehand. So that was like an initial shock for a lot of families of Praxis applicants. And every 6 to 12 months, we noticed more and more people were becoming receptive. And that's partially because we were building a stronger reputation. But I think outside of the scope of our specific business, there's definitely a social movement trending towards, hey, you don't need this college degree to start your career. And it's not going to be an automatic success rate if you do have one. You have to figure out, even whether you have a degree or not, you have to figure out, one, you have to discover what you want to do over time. And then you have to learn those valuable professional skills no matter what. And something like Praxis, for the right person, you just get to start that process earlier.
Great. Yeah, fantastic. Let's talk a bit about key numbers so we can illustrate the growth to the audience. Any indicators there you can share with us from 2015, opening 2014, so going for 6 years now? What, any numbers you can share?
Absolutely. So on the participant growth side, our first year, and we essentially bootstrapped the business early on. We had 14 participants go through the program our first year. And since 2017, we have been 100 plus participants annually. And now we're at the stage of, okay, how do we maintain the quality of participant? How do we maintain the quality of the business and the program experience and start to scale? That's the most important factor for us, is if we sacrifice or try to compromise on that quality, then it's just not a business that I'm interested in building, really, at the end of the day. And then revenue wise, we went from 30 40K and really bootstrapping to, at our peak year, we did just under 1.5 million.
Oh, great. Fantastic. So you've got about 100 candidates on the course a year at the moment, and you're now set up ready for that growth stage of, we've fine-tuned the product or the offering. Now we've got to get into scaling this, while at the same time keeping a hold of the quality of the product so you don't lose that. But marketing really sounds to me like your next big focus or phase.
Yeah, we're really, this year, our priority is dialing in our marketing and sales funnel. And I think what served us very well in the first 2 to 3 years of the business, was more kind of personality and network driven. So if you have one of our early team members have a media appearance, they could go out and crush that appearance, and we get a lot of interest coming off of that. And that's just, there's not enough consistency there to rely on that. Yeah. And now we're really focusing on, all right, what are the 1 or 2 specific growth channels that we can figure out? Okay, like, we've never been in a position where, like, whether it's Facebook ads or in-person conferences, never really discovered that confidence of, all right, we have a very clear indicator of what our ROI is going to be if we put X amount of dollars into this effort.
Yep.
And right, this year we're just running a bunch of smaller experiments to figure out what are going to be those, couple channels we can start to really hone in on.
I think it's a really valuable insight or lesson. James McGregor is a good friend of mine here in Hobart. He runs a tech company called Biteable. They've got 5 million plus, over 5 million customers now. Their website allows businesses to create video ads or videos for their website. And he has got a big sales and marketing background, worked at Big Commerce and a few other big tech companies. And one of the things I learned from him years ago is just to test in marketing. So you try something for a quarter, you try 2 or 3 things, turn off that which isn't working, keep what is, keep refining. And the great thing, obviously, these days with online marketing, everything is so measurable. So you just keep trying things. I remember a story of a friend of mine. I was speaking with her husband one night, and they built pergolas, little wooden structures out in the backyard here in Australia. And there's the roof of that is ColourBond. It's a big product over here in Australia. And I asked him, they were going through phenomenal growth. They were just opening an office in Sydney. He was a builder by trade, and his business partner was on the business side. And I said, how are you guys getting all this growth? Where's all this new work coming from? And he told me this great story where their sales manager, pretty much, he said he just comes into the office now these days, just sits in the tea room, reads the paper most of the day. And we're fine with that, because he had this mentality where he would just test until he found what worked for them. And what worked for them, for me, I was blown away. He said all they would do effectively, they used to put wooden structures, these that they built, into shopping malls and try to do a demo in person. And they found that didn't work. What worked for them was simply hanging a large banner in those shopping malls with a nice image and some good copy. And they would just pay a university student to go and move that banner every week to a new shopping mall. And effectively, that was their gravy train for all their leads. And he said, but if this guy didn't have that mindset just to keep trying and testing until they found the one thing that worked for them, then they doubled down on that.
Yep. Yeah. And I think what I've learned from just the past 5-6 years is, one, you need to have the right talent and the right strategy for the stage of the business you're in. And that's naturally going to change over time. Second thing is that testing and experimentation mindset that needs to become part of the culture of the team at large. Not just within like, hey, who's formally working on marketing or
Absolutely.
sales.
And that mindset or cultural value of it's okay to fail. If you try something and it doesn't work or you fuck it up, let's just move on to the next thing. Let's learn from it and then move on to the next thing. It's okay.
Yeah. So what we've done, especially since the beginning of this year, has been, okay, our priorities, our KPIs that we set up monthly and quarterly have been focused first on learnings. Like we need to prioritize learning. And if we try things out and they don't work, but we learn something from them, that's seen as a win right now. And, of course we have some kind of like minimum revenue and sales goals that we want to be hitting. But the focus right now is how can we be learning so that by the end of this year, we feel really confident that we have a tighter game plan in place.
I think that's a really smart lead indicator. I'm not sure if you've read the book, 4 Disciplines of Execution, but that is one of their big messages, is to look for lead indicators, things that will influence. You don't look for lag measures or historical KPIs, basically. What are some things that really move the needle? And I think that is a great KPI or a lead measure, is what are our learnings this month? We need 7 learnings, whatever it may be. That's great. All right. Well, when was the moment you felt like you'd succeeded?
I don't think I'm capable of ever having that feeling.
The trait with us entrepreneurs and business owners, I think, isn't it?
Yeah. I'm trying to. I've thought about this a few times, and I just think I'll always kind of look for that next challenge. And, whether that's like a next level of growth for the business or some strategic objective or, beyond Praxis itself, like let's look towards the next thing. But as far as, looking back, I think the closest I've come to that is in the middle of 2016, where we finally kind of cracked that nut from going from, 15 to 30 participants a year to, okay, like we clearly reached this additional level of growth.
Yeah.
And, the funnel started to consistently build up, and we were there was a 6 to 8 month period where it was like 20% growth on growth every, each month. And
right.
It was a really exciting time because that was our first taste of,
this is going to really,
after all the hard work, like this feels exciting now.
Yeah. Great. I do want to make a point on this because I do get that response a fair bit that I'm not sure if I'll ever say, I've reached that level of success, but I've certainly, for me personally, I've done some reflecting on that in recent years. And if you don't, because I think a lot of business owners and entrepreneurs are quite driven, and I've been given that feedback over the years where I don't stop to not necessarily smell the roses, but to celebrate success. And if not for my own satisfaction, but particularly for the people that I work with, if you don't stop at when you hit a peak or a milestone or something great has happened or you've achieved something, just to turn around and say, well, guys, we're at a new level here. This is fantastic.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that's really important. And personally, I think what I've really learned is that you need to, and this has become a little bit of a cliche now, but you need to fall in love with the day-to-day process of everything.
Yeah.
And because if you don't, like for me, I had periods of burnout because I was so focused on these quantifiable outcomes that we were trying to hit. And if it was taking longer or taking more effort to get there, then you just kind of tie your personal identity to those things.
Yeah.
And, the past 12 months, I've probably had a couple points in there where I was like, okay, I have to reset and just kind of buy in and commit to the process itself. And if you do that, the outcomes should be a result of that. There's a really, the head coach, the former head coach of the 49ers, I actually have this on my shelf right here. Yeah. Bill Walsh. He has a great book called The Score That Takes Care of Itself. That's kind of the premise of it.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. I think if you don't stop, take a bit of time out of the business. I've certainly burnt out many times in my 20 years in small business, but you have that mindset of, no, I've got to keep going, or there's so much to do. But if you don't stop and take time out, not just to physically recharge, but also mentally, you come back with so much more energy and better ideas, and in a much better place.
Yep. And it doesn't have to take 80-hour work weeks to get the job done. You're going to be more effective finding the right balance for you as an individual.
Yeah, absolutely. And what does success look like for you?
Right now, so I recently took over the business with one investor and a colleague. And so what I'm most excited about is with Praxis specifically, getting us to that next stage of growth. Yeah. So the kind of the big number that I'm focused on right now is going from 100 participants a year to closer to 500 participants a year, and maintaining that quality and everything that goes into, what has to happen in order to make that happen.
Yeah.
And I'm really excited about the personal challenge and experience of, okay, I'm in the CEO chair now. I'm, true owner mindset, and that's going to get me out of my comfort zone in a lot of ways. So I think just going through that experience and making the company better than when I took it over.
Yeah, great. Well, let's talk about funding. So you said you bootstrapped. Have you taken on any other investment during that journey?
We did a $500,000 seed round from kind of like small family offices, not traditional VC or anything. That was 2015, after a year and a half
of proving the model. That's great.
Yep. And then that got us to self-funding in the next year and a half or so. Yeah, in 2016.
Right.
And then we spun out that other startup, which any future funding was related to that.
Right. Okay. So you said before we started recording that, you had a software component to the business, which you've spun out. So now you can really focus on what Praxis is.
Yep.
Great. If you were to start up today with plenty of funding, would you go into your industry? And if not, why, and what else would you do?
I think I would be in the same industry. I'm really just personally interested in this space. And I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity here at that, kind of disrupting higher education, and both on like the programming side, but also on the financing of education side. There's been some interesting developments recently, and I think those will become, bigger and bigger. I think I'm very optimistic over the next 10 years or so, that higher education space is going to look very dramatically different from what it does today.
I think there's big structural changes going on in the education industry right at the moment, and the crisis we're all living through at the moment, with most universities and schools all having to work from home, I think it's a big wake-up call. Yeah, so I think you're in a prime position. What areas in business do you feel you've had to work on the most, add the greatest value?
I think dialing in our customer service and our customer experience has been most valuable. We can, for our participants, I think what they love most about Praxis is not necessarily the outcomes that we produce, because, part of our program is that I think these are all very high quality driven individuals that can produce these outcomes on their own. Just we're helping them do it more efficiently, faster, with some guidance that's helpful. But their relationship with the advisors and the staff members and each other, and as alumni and active participants that they build, that has been kind of our secret ingredient. And I think that's something we stumbled upon early on. And we started to put more and more attention into it and resources into making sure we keep investing into that. So one of our big program priorities this year is building out the long-term community and professional network that participants and alumni get to be a part of.
Yeah, that's great. I've heard that is very valuable in online courses and teachings like this. Ben Crowley from Bulk Nutrients here in Tasmania, he's very big on customer service in his industry. So they sell whey products, protein powders, etc. Bulk Nutrients is the name of their business. They're doing 27 million a year top line, got 55 staff, all based here in Tasmania, just south of Hobart. And that was one of the things he commented on. He said, I did the numbers. It costs bugger all to add an extra customer service person, but we just saw the satisfaction of our customers go through the roof when we had very fast responses, very personable responses rather than bots popping up and auto responding. And he said that has put them streets ahead of their competitors because in their industry, because a lot of it is, in a sense, a commoditized product. Their customers really appreciate having a real person at the end of the email or even phone call. And he points to that as a big reason for their massive growth over the last 14 years.
Yeah, and I think that's something that can get overlooked by a lot of businesses, especially if you're focusing on scaling.
Yeah.
Because now you're kind of focused on, okay, what can we automate? How can we make this more efficient, et cetera? And when you look at a lot of the companies that have been successful long term, I think that quality customer service has always been a common thread.
Yeah, I agree. Can you outline the most stressful point in your small business growth journey so the audience can learn from it?
Yes. So I think it was when I had, early on, for me personally, I always took a mindset of I'm always prepared to do what's best for the company itself. And early on that required a lot of grunt work and, just doing things that I was not necessarily comfortable with, and whatnot. And that's great. I think any business owner is going to have that mindset for sure. But there was a point where I had to lead our business development efforts with our hiring partners. And that initial 6-month period, that's probably the largest learning curve I've had in my own career. And I felt anxiety and like a sense of being overwhelmed that I hadn't felt before. And I just had to fight through it. I eventually got through it. It felt and it took longer than I was planning on it. But that was probably the most stressful. And I definitely see that as a really valuable learning experience now. And now I just have that confidence personally to, okay, I can do what needs to be done. But also I've gained more of an awareness of what my own strengths are and the importance of finding people that complement you instead of feeling like you have to do everything yourself.
Yeah, great. And so the stress around that, was that more the knowledge gap? You just didn't know enough about business development and you're stepping into that corner of the business and you just had that uncertainty?
It was a dual challenge of knowledge gap, not something I'd done before, not something I felt naturally skilled for.
Yeah.
As well as I had to take it over because we had to let somebody on the team go and there was a big hole to dig out of.
Right.
So not only am I uncomfortable, but this is kind of already a overwhelming challenge regardless.
Yes, got it. Yeah, great. And what areas in business do you feel you've had to work on the most to add the greatest value?
I think dialing in our unique approach to the program experience and how we approach like education.
Yeah.
Especially because everything's managed online and all of our participants are remote, you lose out on that in-person experience. And also we have a very non-traditional approach from the typical classroom experience. And we had to constantly, especially in the first 3 to 4 years, it felt like every 3 to 6 months we were changing big portions of the program experience and what the curriculum was. We started out the program, you started an apprenticeship at a business from day one of the program. And now the program is a 6-month boot camp that leads to a job. And that's been a constant project since the beginning of the company. And it's only been the last 18 months where I feel like it's a little more stable.
Yep.
And now we're just making improvements on like this foundation that we've laid, but it's taken a lot of work to get to where we are, and we've learned a lot and we implemented a lot, but definitely have been times where that was done, more haphazardly and unorganized as I would like it to be. But now we're kind of running that more efficiently.
Yeah, great. And what have you enjoyed the least about managing the fast growth?
I think just keeping, I think for us, because of what we do, it's a very personally intensive, like we build strong relationships with our participants, and there are certain parts of the program, like actually placing them in companies and going through that job hunting experience with them, require a lot of effort and time. So as we were growing, we were not really managing growth. There was definitely periods where, all right, we're growing, and it felt like, trying to drink out of a fire hose. And that was probably the main area where it's like, okay, we probably could have used 6 more months to dial this in.
Yeah.
And then that became a stress point for the business at a certain period of time. And for us, our natural model, as participant growth goes up, then we got to go out and get more and more companies to hire them. And, if that's not the case, then, it's a seesaw type of model in some ways. So I think we have it dialed in better now, and we figured out a system. So, okay, I feel very confident about going from 100 to 200. We can kind of duplicate our process and make it a little more efficient. Whereas when we were starting out, going from, hey, we're responsible for placing 5 participants a month to 20 participants a month.
Yeah.
That was a big stressor for sure.
Yes. Yeah, right. So you're constantly on the lookout for those pain points or pinch points in the business where the constraints are and what you need to do to unblock those. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Great. And what's been the biggest mindset shift in your small business growth journey so far? What do you really think about differently now from 6 years ago when you guys really got into it?
I think I'll go back to focusing and falling in love with the day-to-day process over like this big, golden ticket at the end of the journey type of thing. I was relatively young when we started, and I was just super excited about the model and what we were doing and the space we're in. It resonated with me personally based on my own education experiences. And because of that, I was so eager to be like, all right, we're going to build, this huge company, and we're going to do it in overnight. It just felt like you just that naivete.
Yeah.
And after going through a couple periods of burnout, I think that's helped me refocus on, okay, if you're just, there was points where I was probably overworking, not having great work-life balance. And at points you just feel miserable.
Yep.
And then you realize, you start to question, like, why the heck am I doing this to myself?
Yes.
And there's definitely points where I considered like, okay, maybe I just need to go in a different direction. And coming back and just taking time to think through that, and then coming back to realizing, this is actually what I want to be doing, and recommitting to it.
Yep.
And then having the mindset of, I'm going to make sure I enjoy, the day-to-day process and experience of all of this.
Yeah.
And I don't, you don't have to sacrifice long-term ambition to have that, but it does require some discipline to kind of remind yourself of what you're supposed to be focusing on.
Yeah, I agree. Out of interest, do you do any meditation?
I don't. I have in the past, on and off. I think my own form of meditation, I try to get in 1 or 2 walks a day.
Definitely. That's great. Yeah.
It's been hard to just like sit down and do more formal meditation, but just getting outside, especially when it's nice out, and just not having my phone on me, not having, even not even listening to podcasts during that time, just kind of trying to free my mind up has been really valuable.
That's interesting. You're in Denver. I'm in Hobart. And I was saying before the call that I think they're very similar, outdoorsy kind of mindsets, the people here. And I take my chocolate Labrador on a bushwalk most days. And I've caught myself out the other week, I guess in the midst of this virus. I mean, I've already been working from home for 5 or 6 years anyway, but I've noticed I get on the walk. I've got my earphones there if I want to listen to a podcast. But the last week or so, I've just decided, no, I'm just going to walk through nature, listen to the birds, and watch the wallabies bounce through the trees and yell at my dog as he runs off to eat something dead. And I'm finding that quite relaxing. But I interviewed yesterday a good friend of mine in Seattle. He runs a distillery here in Australia, in Melbourne. He moved to USA a year ago to really push the business growth over in the USA. And last time I caught up with him was in Paris in October, and I just remember he was quite stressed at the time, and he was much calmer yesterday. And he made a comment during that interview that he's really gotten into meditation the last 4 months. So I was interested to see if that was something that you were on too.
Yeah. I think just being intentional about making space for whatever that activity is has been really valuable.
In 2014, when you started out, how old were you?
I was 24.
Wow, great. And just to help again back on the numbers of growth, so how many started full-time in 2014?
We had 4 team members.
4, yep. And now you're about 9.
9 and a handful of contractors. Yep.
Right. Okay. So FTE is probably over 10 then, 10 or 11 or 12, something like that.
Right.
That's great. Excellent growth. What is the number one habit you think a small business owner needs to develop and maintain?
I think it's really advantageous early on to have strong personal management skills with your team. Especially with our team, at least, we had a younger team and we had to quickly figure out how to manage young, this is what we do as a program. So I guess it fit accordingly, but we had to figure out how to get somebody up to speed and dialed in, quicker, because with a smaller team, every individual contributor is that much more essential.
Yeah, right. Great. Jump over to growersmallbusiness.com and leave your details to get a short 2-minute email I send on Fridays to help small business owners like you become better leaders. I include some reading or professional development resources I've discovered in the last week. Well, maybe let's talk about that. How did you add people? Any wins, lessons learned, successes, adding people to your team?
Yeah, when we first started out, there was 4 or 5 of us on that early core team. And we weren't really focused on, more formal processes. We were just trying to build the business, and we felt very much on the same wavelength. So we didn't need to rely on, do we have an onboarding document, or what are our, we didn't have like a weekly stand-up meeting or anything like that. We were just communicating as needed on a day-to-day basis. And as we started to grow the team out, and we started to hire especially less experienced people, we realized okay, there's a certain team structure that needs to be put in place.
Yep.
And then I think a big challenge, and this is something I still am trying to work on and improve, is how much should be communicated to the team? What do they need to know in order to be successful and focused on the right things? And how often should those things be communicated? So, early on, it just wasn't a question. Our team had the information that each individual member needed. And now that's become more of a focus for me is, okay, what am I communicating to the team on a weekly, monthly, quarterly basis?
Yeah.
What is the right context for them to do their job very well at a high level? And I know it's not 100% context, because that becomes distracting.
Yes.
And emotional, the emotional roller coaster is for me. And everything. So, but I think I had a tendency of not providing enough context to what's the health of the business, and should we feel more successful right now, versus should the tone of the team be more hey, there's a sense of urgency to get certain things done.
That's great. Yeah, Faden Stow, who I interviewed this week from Mitchell Lake, a executive recruitment firm, started in Australia, but they've got 6 offices around the world, big in the US as well. And one of his key messages was you can't over communicate. So you've got to keep that communication up. And more than what we as owners think is we need to communicate more. And as you just said, other things that we wouldn't even think we needed to pass on to our team. But it's really important.
Right.
And what are some things you recommend of building a sustainable and kick-ass culture to help with the growth?
I think, in some ways, I think that's been a little bit easier for us due to the nature of the company and the program model. Most people that work for us, they're already very excited about like the mission that we're on.
Right.
But that doesn't, I think it's important I think it really does come back to that communication. So, kind of weekly check-ins with individual team members has been really important. Yeah. And then, I think we have part of our culture is there's a lot of freedom and flexibility on our team. Everybody's remote. There's not many specific rules around, when do we work? We don't have any paid time off policies. It's been ingrained in us, like we're self-sufficient and we do what we got to do to get the job done and enjoy life outside of work as well. But I think making the job fun especially when we're working on really hard, difficult tasks.
Yeah, great.
Has been really important.
And how much professional development did you invest in yourself over the years?
I think a lot. Again, it's kind of ingrained in our team culture because of the program we're running, that everybody values professional development and pursuing it on their own. And we've done things in the past, like monthly book clubs and things like that. I've found that when those are, at least for our team, when those are default options, they don't work as well as, hey, there's a really valuable book I came across. Let's dive into this. I think we're going to get something specific out of it. That's been really helpful. Yeah. For me personally, kind of like, I like to read a lot. I both more like, hey, how can this help me business wise? Yeah. But I try to force myself to read non-business content on a regular basis, and kind of keep that stronger like intellectual curiosity. And then you realize after reading something that you thought was completely unrelated, there's always like a couple nuggets to steal and apply, which has been great. And then for me, there's been a handful of relationships of our original founder and a couple people that I have personal relationships with that I would never describe them as like, this is my mentor, this is someone that's advising me, but just there's probably 2 or 3 people that I really respect and value. And when we're making crucial decisions, those are the people I find myself reaching out to get their thoughts on. And both for the business and for my own like personal and professional growth. And that's been the most valuable thing over the years. Yeah, well,
that leads us on to that next question. Have you had mentors or coaches in this business journey?
Yeah. So more, I would say less formal.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things I've tried to optimize for myself early on in my career is going out of my way to work with people that I've kind of value more beyond just, hey, this is a colleague on this business and stuff. These are people that are approaching their professional life similar to me.
Yeah. And have you had a board at all in this 6-year journey, board of directors or even advisors formally?
No formal board.
Yeah.
We early on that the investors that we took the seed round from, they were very hands-off, very, very great in that respect. And the investor we have now has been brilliant to work with so far. Very hands-off, but also has some specific areas of expertise that have been really valuable to tap into, and also just kind of being there as, just someone to bounce ideas off of, strategically long term.
Yeah, great. Well, we're on to our final 5 questions. What do you think is the hardest thing in growing a small business?
I think persistence. I think most people, the longer you go, the more likely that you'll survive and thrive. So just being able to stick with something.
Yeah, good answer. And favorite business book, which has helped you the most?
I really like 0 to 1 by Peter Thiel.
One of the PayPal founders. Yeah.
It's probably my favorite one of my favorite combination of business and philosophy. He comes at business and growing a business and thinking about the strategy and the positioning of the company. You can just tell he's a deeper thinker than most.
Yeah,
and
very
and I find myself coming back to that book when I'm trying to dial in long term.
Yeah, I've read that. He's a very smart guy. It's a great book. Any great podcasts or online learning tools, obviously apart from your own, using your own professional development?
Yeah, the one podcast I've really been enjoying lately, it's, oh my gosh, I have to look it up real quick. The name's escaping me real quick. It's the media company that hosts it. They're called The Hustle.
Right. Yep.
And they're actually, I would recommend them greatly.
I have listened to that. Yeah, I have. Yeah.
It's My First Million.
Yes.
Is the podcast, and they, like, 50% of their episodes are interviewing business owners and entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other 50% are just the two hosts kind of talking about different business ideas, talking about what's going on in the world.
Yep.
And I just appreciate, like, they're a media company that's clearly from a business and entrepreneur perspective.
Got it. Yeah. No, I'm on their newsletter and I used to listen to the podcast. I might jump back onto that. What's one tool you'd recommend to help grow a small business?
A good team. Does that count?
Great answer. That is a great answer. No one's given that one yet, but it's so important. I think it was Robert Sharma that said, the bigger the dream, the bigger the team.
Absolutely.
And the final and my favorite question, what would you tell yourself on day one of starting out?
Patience. Practice patience.
Yep. Great. Well, thanks for your time today, Cameron. I think the audience will get a lot of value from your journey and what Praxis does and everything you've shared with us today. So I really appreciate you coming on the cast.
Yeah, I had a blast, Troy. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. And for our audience, we'd greatly appreciate a review in iTunes or whatever platform you listen to us on. More reviews means we bubble up higher in iTunes, etc. So more business owners looking for podcast help with their growth will find us.